Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. The Inside the Birds podcast dropped this morning. Greg Cosell joined Adam Kaplan and Geoff Mosher for an excellent, insightful look at the Eagles as we are counting down the hours. There's no more days, it's hours until the Eagles report the training camp. Not that they're actually going to do anything tomorrow, but the fact that they're in there, it just gets the juices flowing. And Geoff Mosher is now with us here on Football at 4. Geoff, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Josh. How are you?
Doing good. So, first of all, beautiful timing by Greg Cosell to let you guys build up the inside the NFC East look right up to the day before the Eagles report to camp.
Oh, you thought that was Greg. You think that's Greg Cosell's planning that had it done right up.
Well, no, I thought it was your plan, but it was
Greg.
Greg's. It was nice enough to Greg to accommodate you.
Yeah, it is. Oh, hey, man, it's great to have Greg on. He's a wonderful addition to the Inside the Birds family. A lot of we don't joke about this. This is serious, but it's kind of odd in that there's probably nobody who watches more NFL tape than Greg Cosell, including NFL employees. Because most NFL teams, the people who watch tape, they're watching the next opponent, they're watching division, they're watching their own team for evaluation. But Greg watches every single team all throughout the year, all throughout the offseason. And as he mentioned to do our podcast preview, he goes back to a lot of teams in the offseason that he was watching games of and then watches individuals, specifically quarterbacks, right, and how they perform on third down or situationally, which is always a great extra study for him and provides a valuable resource for us. But there isn't a scheme, player, or team that he has not seen.
I love the part when Cosell said in the podcast he watched over 200 snaps in a row of Jalen Hurts before he started writing his notes down. Like, talk about the commitment he has. Like, when Greg Cosell says, I watched the tape, he means he literally watched the tape. And that's why I love it when he comes on with you guys.
There's a formula sort of it's not an exact science, but to tape watching, because it can be a monotonous thing and you don't want your eyes to get tired of seeing the same thing over and over. But something I learned doing the scouting academy is, you like to watch, let's say you're going to scout a specific player, a left tackle, a wide receiver, and you want to watch 5 games of that person. That's usually a good sample size. A couple of road games, a couple of home games, maybe a division game, just because there's different context in the situations. One beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, same thing.
Makes sense.
But the first 2 games really are kind of like you're not note-taking with a pen and pad or anything. You're just getting kind of a big picture concept of what the player can and can't do just by watching some tape. And then, like, by the time you get to game 3 or game 4, certain things will also already be in your mind from what you watched. There'll be things to look out for. And that's when you really start to do your kind of get into your note taking. This for me, I don't know if it's for everybody, but it's something I learned through the scouting academy. But yeah, game 3, 4, 5, that's when you sort of get into your heavy duty note taking. But it is always good to just give yourself some sort of just give your eyes a set point for the first 2 games without already going to the notebook and breaking up your habit of just watching play after play after play.
So with that being said, I mentioned Cosell spent all that time looking at Jalen Hurts. For you, Geoff, I don't want to give it all away, but was there something that Greg said on the pod about Jalen Hurts that maybe stood out to you versus some of the other things? Because he had a lot of different things to say about Hurts.
Yeah, he was I thought it fair and balanced with Jalen Hurts. Even used the word mixed bag, meaning he went back and watched mostly first down and third down throws, first down passes and third down throws. And he was able to find what he thought Jalen did well and where he thinks Jalen needs to improve the most. And I think so we use a term a lot, right? A lot of the things that don't go right for a player, we say are coachable, meaning it's not a natural thing. Like a guy has enough arm strength, the guy has enough athleticism, What that person needs to do, though, is fine-tune X, Y, and Z, which is something you work on with coaches, which Greg Cosell was talking about with Jalen Hurts. Now, in my experience, and I think a lot of people would say this, just because something's coachable doesn't mean it's going to be it doesn't mean the improvement's going to be made, right? It's still up to the player and also the coaching to be good. But that's always something you'd rather have as far as a talent or an ability that is simply not there.
When you think about Jalen Hurts, because obviously a lot of people are going to be watching him this year, you mentioned the coachable part. How much is the coachable part also the fact this is the first time this guy's going to be in the same offense with the same guy in his ear calling plays since basically high school?
I think that'll help. I mean, I imagine that when you say same offense, you're talking about verbiage, because it probably will look stylistically different and schematically different. But I do think it's to his benefit that he has the same set of eyes and ears, same set of people in the classroom, even as the same backup quarterback. Although last year they did have Joe Flacco for a while, but Gardner Minshew there.
Right.
So it's a pretty good environment, and obviously the offense is a little bit better with the addition of A.J. Brown, some other guys. So the environment is there for more improvement, and I think he does have to make a big improvement in certain areas. Not many, but some that are very key. As far as kind of to me, the biggest thing is, and Greg made this point. So again, not to give everything away, but this is an important one we can talk about that's been talked about before. There is pressure that's reality, and then there's pressure for a quarterback that's somewhat perceived. Jalen and a lot of quarterbacks who are not, who are still trying to improve, tend to feel pressure coming when it's not there. They see color, right? Or they see movement, and they feel that is the sign of a breakdown in protection and that they got to get out of the pocket. Sort of, it's a philosophy or a mentality or an instinct, really, that the best quarterbacks realize that doesn't always mean the pressure is going to be in your face, doesn't mean your offensive line is not going to recover, or that the movement that you're sensing may be on your own team. Trey Thomas has broken this down for us on Inside the Birds that sometimes in pass protection, when the running back runs in front of Jalen Hurts' face or has to go across him to pick up a blitzer, that has forced Jalen out of the pocket because it feels like pressure even though it's not there. So I think that there's some other things like footwork and mechanics and knowing where you want to go with the ball before. But I think the biggest thing for Jalen is to be a little bit more relaxed in the pocket and navigate it and let that pass come into its own, that pass play, if it's there, as opposed to just kind of getting out of there the first sign that you think there might be pressure.
Now, moving over to who Jalen will be throwing the ball to, I thought Greg Cosell on the Inside the Birds podcast brought up an interesting point when you asked him the question about the Eagles receivers getting open last year. My mind immediately went back to when Nick Sirianni was asked last year, what's the most important thing for a receiver? And Sirianni's like, he has to be able to get himself open. And Cosell was saying that, hey, these guys were getting open maybe a little more often than people gave him credit for.
Yeah, and I think his larger point is that there are tons of times against zone defenses where it's not that necessarily that the wide receiver is getting open on his own abilities, but he's open because the left side of the zone was flooded with three receivers, but there are only two defenders there, so you naturally find a hole, right? Because we talked about this a lot last year, and Greg would bring up points, and Face and Avant would find them, and Adam and I would see it too in tape study there, where there were open receivers because it was a well-designed play against a zone, and you had a guy finding a pocket or in the seam or in the flat where he's open, and Jalen Hurts was not seeing him there. So that I believe is where we have the biggest kind of breakdown in open versus not open. But I also think, and this is me personally, Greg, I asked Greg about it, and it didn't recall him to him, but it certainly stood out to me that there were times when Jalen would have to leave the pocket or did leave the pocket. And when that happens, he's buying time for his receivers, right? And I thought that there were times where the Eagles receivers last year, including Dallas Goedert at times, struggled to get off of plaster coverage, which should not be that difficult. You've got the upper hand. The quarterback's running. The defensive back is sort of like, I don't know what to do here. I'm going to cover my guy, but I got to keep my eyes on the quarterback too in case he's running. And those were times where I felt like the Eagles did not do a great job of presenting openings for Jalen Hurts all the time. So I felt that they needed to work on getting off man coverage better, getting open off man coverage better. And I would imagine that the addition of A.J. Brown would help them with that.
How much also do you think, and this is not something Cosell brought up specifically, but I want to ask you, Geoff, is there also a factor of, hey, for some of those guys, this was the first year in Sirianni's offense. How much is that maybe a factor? Because a lot of times about the quarterback in the offense, but, the receivers got to run routes. The offensive line's got to block. Is there some part of it to familiarity for those guys as well in year two?
I suppose so. I mean, I'm sure people will say that. Sometimes, though, it was a new offense for the running game. It didn't seem like that there was any issues there, right? So I just think that we can nitpick at that, but that there are examples of new regimes taking over and doing just fine, So I don't know that was as much of an issue because it's not a complex offense. It's kind of it's a more pure West Coast offense of the Frank Reich mold than even the one that Doug Peterson was running. So I don't think that was any major restriction to the passing game.
Geoff Mosher, co-host of the Inside the Birds podcast, Eagles Insider, joining us here at Football at 4 on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennick filling in for Mike Gill. The other thing I thought was interesting that you guys asked Cosell about the offensive side of the ball was, you were touching base with him, and I know he didn't want to fully answer because Greg's not the kind of guy that just throw out like hot takes and stuff like that.
Correct.
But, I did think it was interesting that, Greg didn't bring up specific guys of the receivers too much, but he did say that he assumes that A.J. Brown is going to have an impact on the offense. So, Geoff, in your mind, what are something that maybe the Eagle fan can look at A.J. Brown and say, this is how he changed the offense from last year to this year?
Yeah, well, first of all, A.J. Brown's sort of unique for Eagles wide receivers because not since, I would say, Terrell Owens, and I'm not making apples-to-apples comparison, so everybody can relax, but the Eagles receivers have tended to be on that, shorter, thinner side, not really big physical freak of natures. Like you can put Alshon Jeffrey in the big physical category, but he was more like go throw the ball in his heyday with the Bears, 30 yards downfield, he'll jump up and catch it. And to be honest with you, he never really brought that to the Eagles because whether it was Carson or even a little bit Jalen, they just didn't kind of throw those type of balls to him. So, but the Eagles receivers in the past have been like your Deshaun's, your Jeremy Maclin's, Torrey Smith. They've all had a certain type of look and build about them. A.J. Brown is built like a tank. He's not the tallest guy in the world, but he's 6'something", 2-something. So 220, I believe. He is a freak of nature as an athlete. And so I think what you should see is a guy who can, for that size and that ability, still be able to move both east-west, north-south similarly and catch the ball, turn upfield, break contact, and not lose a whole lot of his second-level acceleration, which is rare, and that's what makes him one of the better wide receivers in the league. And sort of unique. I mean, he's got this physical, compact power build that enables him to do things with the football after the catch that I don't think a guy like Devontae Smith could excel at because Devontae is just not that kind of guy. Or same thing with Deshaun Jackson, was not that kind of guy. Jeremy Maclin, accelerator, yeah, certainly, but he was more likely to beat you over the top than to take a 10-yard pass and then add 30 more yards onto it through either contact or just finding a hole to accelerate through the way I imagine that the way that A.J. Brown should be used and will probably be used in this offense.
Flip over to the defense. How surprised or what was your takeaway from Greg Cosell being as complimentary as he was of Josh Sweat?
So he feels that Josh Sweat can be an even better pass rusher, but only, don't want to say only, but used in a certain way,
Right.
which is stretched out in the way Jim Schwartz used him, in a wide 9 where he's just kind of beat the offensive tackle, beat the right tackle, and get to the quarterback. If you play him over left tackle and then bring Hasan Reddick as the strong side linebacker down on the line of scrimmage, which they've been doing, or they will probably do, then you have to kind of move that DN, Josh Sweat, head up over the inside, over the tackle. So he's playing a different alignment, like a 5 or a 7 technique. If he's a little outside, it's a little 7. So that changes his ability to use space with his speed. So if you can play him on the other side of scrimmage over right tackle and stretch him out there, play him in a 7 or a 9 technique, give him space, Greg believes that would capitalize on what he brings from a speed to power rusher and enable him to get more sacks.
Do you think that part of that also, Josh Sweat having maybe more of an impact, is also in part because he has Hasan Reddick on the other side, that, having more of those guys, like, no offense to Derek Barnett, but there's a huge difference between Josh Sweat and Barnett and Josh Sweat and Hasan Reddick out there.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. One of the things in watching tape of Hasan Reddick I noticed was that he's so explosive that even when he doesn't get the sack, he forces a quarterback off his mark very quickly. The quarterback may have to step up into the pocket or step out or just basically move, and if you're coming from the left edge, over the left tackle, and you're Hasan Reddick and you're forcing the quarterback to move to his right, especially if he's right-handed, you're basically forcing him right into the alley for Josh Sweat there. So you get what you call the cleanup sack, right? So I would anticipate that's going to be kind of a formula for the Eagles for both of those two guys.
Flip it over to the linebacker real quick. I thought it was interesting how Greg Cosell basically, and he's not wrong when he said this, but I love that he said it because it's something that I think needs to be said out loud, that the Eagles probably don't want TJ Edwards as the starting linebacker, in nickel next year, which they'll probably be running most of. And, the idea is something that you and Adam have brought up multiple times on the Inside the Birds podcast is they brought in Kazir White for a reason. They drafted Nakobe Dean for a reason. Like, they didn't bring these guys in just, for the fun of it. Like, these guys could potentially be your starting linebackers week 1.
When TJ Edwards made the team a couple of years ago as an undrafted rookie free agent from Wisconsin, he was a Wisconsin linebacker. And anybody knows, anything about Wisconsin and the style of defense they play, it's downhill, it's hard-nosed, it's Big Ten football, or at least what it used to be. Who knows what it's going to look like now with USC in it, but that's for another day.
We got 2 years till that happens, so.
Right. I would give TJ all the credit in the world because he has made himself into a better – you can't really make yourself a better athlete, right? You can lose weight, you can do things to help yourself run and be a better sideline to sideline guy, better coverage guy, and he's done that, and he's smart, really smart. So he's made himself into more than just a downhill linebacker. But at the end of the day, Kaiser White, even Davion Taylor, and of course Nakobe Dean are more natural in that position. They're more rangy, they're more athletic, and they're built to take on more of a second, third down role, nickel role, dime role. And so if TJ Edwards has to do that, it's more likely that they were not happy with what they got from those other names than that TJ Edwards has now built himself into a 3-down linebacker. He really should be a base linebacker who's used against the run and can fill in nickel if need be. But ideally, Kazir White, Nakobe Dean, Davion Taylor, you're talking about 3 guys battling for 2 spots. They should be able to find 2 out of that can do what they want from an athleticism and coverage standpoint.
Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast. You can follow him on Twitter at Geoff Mosher NFL. Jeff, before I let you go, I want to rope you into my poll question of the day. You ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
So, in the last 22 years, which of these 4 is the worst of the Philly free agency failures? So,
oh boy.
The options were Eagles letting Dawkins walk, Sixers letting Butler leave, Flyers ignoring that Goudreau wanted to be here, or the Phillies giving Adam Eaton $15 million for him to have a 6.10 ERA.
All right. I think I can eliminate Adam Eaton. As bad as that contract was, I don't know that they were ready to really. What year was that? I can't.
That was
refresh my memory again.
2007.
Yeah, they were trying to get back and be competitive. And of course, in 2008, they would make the playoffs. But I don't know. I don't think anybody really loved that contract from the start, and they were still just trying to do something that they thought would work at that point, and just didn't. I'm not much of a hockey guy, but I gotta think that if Johnny Gaudreau wants to come to your team, and he's that good, and you can't make it happen, that's got to be the blunder of all blunders. Like I can't think of. I know with the Eagles, if the best player in the game, if Tom Brady said I wanted to be an Eagle,
right?
Howie Roseman would figure out a way to make it happen.
Well, maybe it's
no matter what the cap says.
Maybe not as Tom Brady. Maybe it's, I don't know, DeAndre Hopkins. You know what I mean?
Anybody. Right. So that one seems pretty. That one might be the one. What were the other ones again? The
Sixers letting
Dawkins
Butler
leaving.
leave.
Right.
And then Dawkins.
Now, you know what? That's a tough one, too. That one, I mean, I have a hard time not thinking that if the Sixers had just kept Butler, they wouldn't have at least been in the NBA championship round, the finals. I mean,
well, right now.
That and Gaudreau to me are right up there. And now that I think about it, I'd probably put that number one and Gaudreau, too.
Well, right now, the polling has 43% Sixers not keeping Butler. Dawkins is hanging around at 34%. Gaudreau is at 16%.
The only reason I struggle with the Dawkins thing is because they were, even without Dawkins, they went back to the NFC Championship game in 2008, 2009? No. What year was that? Was that Dawkins last year?
I thought Dawkins last year was the year they went. I'm going to double check it here, but the reason I had to put Dawkins in there, I know some people were saying to me, why not Nnamdi Asomugha? And the reason why not Nnamdi is because Dawkins was still a good player. Dawkins' first year in Denver was 2009.
That was his first season.
2009 in Denver.
2009. Okay, so he was on that NFC Championship team that lost to Arizona. Yeah. That's pretty good. I just don't know that if he comes back, they're definitely in the Super Bowl the next year. I mean, with football, you get so many moving parts. But I can almost guarantee you, if Jimmy Butler were still on this team, the Sixers would have been in the NBA Finals by now. I know everybody could say, well, they didn't get there with him, but they did lose to the champion Toronto Raptors on a triple doink. That was as close as they were to being a championship caliber team, a real championship caliber team.
And it doesn't help that Jimmy has led the Miami Heat to 2 Eastern Conference championships, and he went blow for blow with LeBron in the bubble in the NBA Finals. I mean, to me, that's why the Jimmy Butler thing hurts, because that's why to me Dawkins and Butler hurt for me the most, is because you saw them both do something without you. And it's almost like, if you're an Eagle or a Sixer fan, you look over and you're like, you see your ex with somebody and they're doing great without you,
Yes, that is difficult. No doubt about it.
At Geoff Mosher NFL on Twitter, the Inside the Birds podcast dropped this morning. Get all the information from Greg Cosell as we are counting down the hours to Eagles reporting a training camp, Jeff. Hours.
So you count report day as the start of training. You don't count Wednesday. So to you, tomorrow is the start of training camp?
Because tomorrow is the day that SportsCenter will have the cameras out front and watching all the guys walk in. That's the start of training camp to me.
I feel like that's a little old. Yeah, that's true. Well, now that Eagles don't go away, it's not as fun watching guys pull up to these really small dorms in Lehigh with all their Mega Million type of accessories and stuff.
Well, apparently, I don't know if you saw on Twitter, A.J. Brown is already in town. He's buying random Eagle fans' jerseys. So,
good way to endear himself. That's excellent.
Well, it also helps.
I still remember Brian Westbrook he dragging a hyperbaric chamber into his little Lehigh dorm room. I'm like, his poor roommate. Who is sleeping in a room with a dorm room that has a hyperbaric chamber in it? Westbrook and all their luggage and everything. I was hoping it wasn't a big offensive lineman.
I'm sure whoever it was, he took care of him.
I'm sure.
Knowing what I've heard about Brian, what I've heard about Brian Westbrook, I'm sure that whoever the roommate was, he was probably buying his food or something, just to make it up to him.
That is true.
Jeff, I will catch you on Friday.
All right, sir. Look forward to it. Be good.
Tomorrow will be Adam Kaplan, Tuesday and Wednesday here on Football at 4.